Hi, bunnies. Ooh, Happy New Year. And so today I'm going to do just a kind of motivational and give you some ideas on how you can read. I mean, the limit is endless, but I could say you could easily read at least 30 to 60 books by the end of 2022 if you do the things that I am going to present to you in this video. So if you're interested in that, please, keep up with me. I will put some timestamps of different things because I have about 10. Yeah, I wrote it down. I have 10 tips that helped me. I think I read about 55 books in 2021. I didn't update it completely on my Goodreads, so don't yell at me. I need to update that whole reading challenge thing. But whether you're part of a reading challenge or not, there's so many books and there's so little time. How do we get through them? How do we expand our worldview and vocabulary? We're going to do it this way. Okay, so here's my first tip. And I will say that this is kind of like INTJ style because I think we do have a reputation for setting hard goals when it comes to reading and reading all the time. And it's kind of like, how do they read so much? How do we read so much? How do you keep up with an INTJ? It's just reading all the time. Okay, I'm going to give you your first tip. So the first tip is, and this is the biggest tip, and if you take nothing else from this entire video, please take this. It's only read books about topics you are obsessed with. Not just topics that you like, but topics you are obsessed with. If you're anything like me, I go through phases with different obsessions in my life. So I could be really into dark fantasy, or I could be really into I was really into tarot for a little while, and I read 3 books on tarot. Whatever your current obsession is, read those books. And I think this is a little counterintuitive to other advice that you may get about reading, because I think a lot of times you'll hear people say, oh, read widely, or read, the classics, or read Jane Austen. No. If you're not into Jane Austen, don't read Jane Austen. If you're not into that time period, don't read it. Don't waste your time on that. Only spend your time reading stuff you're really excited about, and or authors that you super like. And I don't care if they're authors that get shit on all the time. For example, I'm a big Charles Bukowski fan, and I hear girls shit on him all the time. It doesn't matter. I get my reading up because I like reading him, So it doesn't matter if it's someone that you're not supposed to like. Forget about that. That's not their eyes. That's not the stuff they're consuming. It's what you're consuming. So that is my number 1 tip, and that alone would have you read at least 12 books in the next year. Okay, tip number 2. So this also is a bit counterintuitive, but as soon as I start getting bored with a book, I stop. I stop temporarily, and then I pick up something else. So I usually in my rotation have about 5 to 10 books that I'm reading currently, but altogether I usually have about 60 to 70 books that I'm reading. The thing is that I just have this thing in me where for example, I'm reading I'm reading a comic book, a very famous comic book. I'm gonna put it up on this side here. And I just stopped because I was getting annoyed with the characters. I am going to come back to it. I commit to reading the book. There's only been 1 book that I've just stopped reading, just DNF, did not finish, and that is that Mark Maron book. And I have my own reasons for that. But basically, everything I start reading, I will finish it, but it may take up to 15 years, and that is fine with me because this is pleasurable. This is for me to enhance my knowledge, spend time the way I want to spend it, and learn about things that I want to learn. I have a Marlon Brando book right now that I think I have 20 pages left. I'm going to finish it. I don't know when I'm going to finish it, but I'm going to get the urge. I'm going to be I'm going to finish that Marlon Brando book. That's going to happen. Last year, I did that with 3 books that I had started years before that I just finished. And one of those was that Mindy Kaling book. She has 2. I think it was the second one where I had literally read 75% of the book and I just stopped. And then last year I picked it up and I finished it because I was I just want to finish it. So yeah, as soon as you're not feeling the book, put it down, pick up something else. And usually what will happen is, in the back of your mind, you'll kind of be thinking about that book you just put down. And then you're like, okay, tonight I'm going to go back to it. You know what I mean? It's your timeline. So even though I say, you're going to end up reading 60 plus books in a year, it's your timeline. So if you start 120 books this year, but you finish 70, and then next year you finish, I can't do math, but that other 50 plus some, it doesn't matter. Like, that timeline doesn't matter. And yes, that's my cat going crazy in the background. So my third tip is, as soon as you finish a book, update it somewhere. And I think this is really, to our interest right now, because, we share everything. But I think it's great to share what you're reading. If it's on Goodreads or if it's on Twitter, usually there's a share option. If you're reading on Kindle, I read a lot on Kindle. But it can even be just in your book bullet journal or your regular bullet journal, or just taking notes somewhere. Just say, I finished XYZ on this date, right? And that brings me to the next tip, which is to write down 5 things you learned from the book. Literally just 5, because I know that, I extensively like to keep notes and everything, but sometimes it's like I just need to get down what's top of my brain, and then I will come back to it. And I'm doing that with this relationship book, where I read the whole thing, I highlighted everything, but now I'm manually and adding it to Evernote now, but I'm doing that on an ongoing basis. But when I finished it, I wrote the 5 top things that I learned from the book. Just 5. Just limited to 5, right? If you want to add on to that, you can also add your 5 top lingering questions that you have from the book. And this can lead to further reading, other authors that may tackle the same subject. And I do understand that this probably applies more to nonfiction than fiction. I think I overall read more nonfiction, but I do read fiction as well. And usually what I do with fiction is I just read my favorite authors. That's how I commit to reading fiction. I read my favorite authors. When it comes to nonfiction, I don't commit to my favorite authors, but I read the topics that I'm most interested in. So I think that's the easiest way to consume both fiction and nonfiction. What else? So yeah, you can write these on a post-it note. You can write it in your notes, but I think just documenting 5 things you learned and 5 lingering questions is really cool, really dope. I do it. And then in an extensive way, I'll go back and start manually adding everything in, and I'll do that in Evernote or in a bigger journal. But just get what you need down for each book, and it'll be very rewarding for you. And when people ask you about it, you won't just be staring, thinking like, oh, I don't know, what. No, you have those things in your mind already. And it also shows that you consumed it in a way that you're supposed to consume literature, in that it's supposed to it should answer less questions, but it should raise many questions. At least good literature should do that. My number 5 tip is to reread. Now, that is another big secret. That's another big tip. A lot of these books are books that I'm rereading for the 2nd or 3rd time. So I'm not someone that just wants to read something and then put it down and then just add it like a notch on my belt, like a boy or a girl I hooked up with. No, I want to go back and I want to read it again and have a deeper understanding of it than I did before. And this will also help me when I do my next set of 5 things I learned this time. And here are my 5 next lingering questions. And a lot of times you'll just know, when you have a first pass through a book, you have missed at least 35% of the book. I'm dead serious. Like, your mind has just skipped over at least 35% of the book the first time you read a book. Where did I get that number from? I just made it up. Okay. Thank you. So I think rereads count that as you reading the book again. You're reading a book, right? So I'm all for rereading, and I think every book, especially a book you say you love, you should reread it at minimum 3 times. It doesn't have to be in the same year, but giving a book you love a reread once a year, I think that's a great kind of tradition that you can have with yourself. You can share that with friends if you are that type. And also if your friends, have similar interests to you. But yeah, make it an annual tradition that you read through such and such book and or, just, on topically books that you want to read over and over and again. My number 6 tip is audiobooks. So I have quite a few audiobooks. I go back and forth with my Audible subscription, and then I also got this thing where I just remembered something because I just found a tool that can convert the Audible to I think MP3. I just found that tool, and I just remembered that there's like 2 more books, including Lonesome Dove, that I've been wanting to read, and yeah, I need to do that. So I need to get onto that. But however you listen to it, I think that's helpful. One thing with audiobooks is I've tried a couple of things with audiobooks. So I've tried listening to audiobooks while I clean. I've tried listening to audiobooks while I'm doing something else with my hands. So it could be playing a game or knitting or cooking. And I've also tried reading audiobooks while reading the book. That was very distracting because I realized that even speeding up the audiobook, I still felt like I wasn't reading at the same time that the narrator was, reading the book out loud. So that one was a little weird for me. But once again, you have those options. You have the options to, one, speed it up. That's something I definitely do. I definitely speed my audiobooks up to at least 1.25. I think I have done 1.5 or 1.75, but that was with a very slow narrator. Do that, and then decide if you're the audiobook person that just wants to sit there and listen and just meditate while you're listening to it, or if you want to do it while cleaning or doing something else with your hands, or if you actually like to read along or just take notes, for example. If you can read along with the book while listening to it, please let me know and how that works for you and how you make that work, because I just haven't made that, it hasn't worked for me thus far. 7, fill your empty spaces in your day with reading. So there are a lot of empty spaces that we have in our day when it comes to waiting rooms, or waiting for someone to call you back, or being on hold, or someone said on Twitter, like, what did people do before they had smartphones, right? And I am part of a generation that, even though I was a kid, I do remember a time before smartphones, and I do remember people pulling out books literally on the line for grocery shopping. I remember seeing that. I used to always see people with books. I'm not saying people don't carry physical books now, but it may be Kindle or whatever it is, but fill every empty space with reading. If you're on the toilet, you know what I mean? Fill your empty spaces with reading, and you'll find you'll be able to squeeze in a lot more than if you dedicate a certain amount of time to reading. You may not want to do that. Next tip I have is to read at night. That works very well for me, because there comes a point of the night where I've turned out all the lights and everything's just over, and I just have a lot of thoughts in my head, and the worst thing I can do at that time is scroll Instagram or scroll something else. Like, it's mindless, and that's what I want to do. I want to do something mindless. But I always find I feel better if, instead of just mindlessly scrolling, I read my current, book that I'm reading. So that's something that is easy, because you wouldn't even need to dedicate time to it. You already know there's probably at least a half hour that you're laying in bed every night before you actually fall asleep. Why not fill that time with a book on a subject you love, or by an author you love? The next step is to highlight and take notes. That works great for me. I love highlighting. I love taking notes. I like to go back. I also like to, if it's like a physical book, I like to do my highlights in one color the first pass, and then on a different color the next pass, because it shows me, oh look, I'm catching different things with each read. And I think that, books are worth a first, second, third, fourth read, and that 100% counts. And you'll probably find you go through the book faster the second and third and fourth time, because you already kind of have it in your brain. So that's another way really to bump up your numbers, even though I've brought it up so many times, but I'm just saying that like it is much easier. A book that you've read 10 times, you're gonna go through that faster than a book you've never read before, or a book that you're just rereading for the first time. So that's another time saver right there. So now I just want to share kind of like what I'm currently reading. I'm gonna put up like a collage or something on the side, maybe on the side. I don't know, because I am currently reading kind of like 60 books, but I'm really reading, let's say maybe 5 to 7 in that. That's kind of in my rotation right now of books that I'm reading. And like I said, these are topics that I'm interested in, authors that I love, stories that I love, and, you know, topics I want to know more about. And it's a lot of fun, and there are no rules. These are just tips and suggestions. And it'll be fun, like make your own little collage of books that you're reading. I think I kept up with it for a while on Notion, but I've kind of slacked with that because I've just been writing it down. But I think I want to go back to adding all the books I've read to Notion because it was really fun to look at everything in that format. Lastly, I wrote a little bit of fiction. I wrote a short story that I've entered into a contest, and I'm going to link down below in the case that you're interested in reading it. The main character is male, so that was something new for me because I usually don't write male main characters. And the name of the story is The Reason Trees. So if you're interested in that short story, I'll link it below, and you can support me there by liking or sharing the story. If you like this video, please like the video, you know. I'm so bad at this, but you know, like it. You know, subscribe if you want. I kind of want to make it to a point now, like when I share things on this channel, that it's just stuff that is, I feel like this audience would actually be interested in, because I do think I was like sharing stuff here that like shouldn't be here, which is why now I'm posting those things on my next channel, my other channel, which is More Evil Bunny. And then I know it doesn't even, like, first of all, I just want to preface this by saying I have a third channel too, but I kind of don't want to talk about it in this moment because I'm still trying to get that together. It's like, why would a person that has posted once in a year have 3 channels now? Why would they do that? I don't know. I don't know, but it came into my head when I wanted to make this video, where I was just like, I want to talk about other things that I'm interested in, but I only want, like, I want to share relevant things to this audience. Like, I feel like that's more respectful, and it's going to make more sense. So if I want to talk about other topics, I should do that on another channel. What I really wish is that YouTube could have it where you could have multiple topics on one channel, and then people can just, like, sign up for the topics they're interested in. But once again, YouTube hasn't done that yet, so hopefully they do. Anyway, gonna stop rambling. I hope that any of these tips were useful. If they are, you know, hit me up on IG and let me know how you've increased the amount of books you've read from these tips. And if you have any other tips, please share them, as I would love to hear them. And I want to thank you for your time. And until next time, bye bunnies.